Are Brett Baty and Zach Neto must-add hitters? Find out next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5. Today is Monday, April 17th. I am Frank Sanford, joined by Scott White. And let's talk about more prospects that are on the way. Brett Baty to be called up by the New York Mets. We saw him for a bit last year. Former first-round pick from back in 2019. 9 games at AAA this season. Hitting .400, 5 homers, and OPS up over 1,300. Scott, Brett Baty, 66% rostered, so he's mostly been stashed already. But if he's available, is he a must-add?
I think he's pretty close. It always comes down to who you'd be dropping him for, right? And I was getting some questions on Twitter. Oh, should I drop Christian Walker for him? Miguel Vargas for him? Jordan Walker for him? Well, no. But if you can add Brett Baty by some reasonable means, I think you should do it. I'd certainly drop like Brendan Donovan, who got a lot of action early in the season. I'd certainly drop him for Brett Baty. I'd drop like Spencer Steer for him, or Elahiris Montero, somebody like that. Because I do think there's considerable upside here with Baty. He was killing it at AAA after a good spring where he probably should have made the team. And the fact he's being called up already, I wonder if the Mets regret that, because now they don't have a chance of securing an extra draft pick for him. But I digress. .400 batting average with 5 home runs in 9 games at AAA for Brett Baty, and his average exit velocity, at least what they were able to measure in the minors, was over 100 miles per hour. Oof. So he was just crushing it. And we saw that from him in the little bit he was in the majors last year too. His exit velocity is very impressive, kept the strikeouts under control. As a left-handed hitter, was even delivering premium exit velocities against lefties. And he's being called up not because of an injury or anything, just because the Mets say, okay, he's ready to go. Will they let him play every day, lefties, righties, or will Eduardo Escobar interfere still, particularly against lefties, something? And that's the big question. But if Baty performs, the more he performs, the more consistent the playing time will be, and there's a chance he's a top 10 third baseman for the rest of the way. And, maybe even better than that.
The other prospect we saw get called up this weekend was Zach Neto by the Angels, and he was a first-round pick in last year's draft, 13th overall. He's only played 44 games in the minors, so this is really, really aggressive promotion here. He hit 8th on Saturday and then was leading off on Sunday with Taylor Ward getting the day off. Scott, what do you think about Zach Neto, and would you add him or Vaughn Grissom if you needed a middle infielder?
Well, I'll answer the second question first. I would rather have Vaughn Grissom than Neto. We've seen Vaughn Grissom have a lot of success against major league pitching already, and he'll be picking up shortstop eligibility in short order. But they're both, given how much the shortstop position, given the way it's been crushed by injuries so far, Grissom and Neto both are arriving at just the right time for fantasy. Neto has very limited exposure at the professional level. He was a consensus top 100 prospect entering this year, but from the scouting reports, it seemed like it was surprising what he was able to do right away. He has this big leg kick in his swing that helps him to maximize what's supposed to be modest power. Like the raw power for Zach Neto is pretty modest, but he's just perfectly attuned to swing to get the most out of it. And will that translate to the majors? The Angels are obviously optimistic it will. What I like in the case of both Baty and Neto is that it's merit-based. They were called up because their teams thought they were the best option, not because they were pressed into that by an injury or something. And in the case of Neto, the fact he was batting leadoff in his second game, I think is even more encouraging. If you can only get one of the two, Baty's the one to get. But your need might be greater at shortstop, and if so, take a shot on Neto.
There were a few waiver wire pitchers that emerged this weekend, Scott, but one that I know that you're very interested in is Johan Oviedo, who had 10 strikeouts against the Cardinals this weekend. He now has 15 strikeouts, just 1 walk over his last 2 starts, 31% rostered, so he's widely available. The problem is that if you add him, probably not going to play him this week because he's at Colorado.
Yeah, that's a small problem, I would say. I mean, Generally speaking, you're not going to start a pitcher you had off waivers right away. You're just doing it for the upside. And I think the upside here for Oviedo, just from the perspective of, okay, I'm telling you, there's a pitcher out there who has a fastball that regularly hits 99, has a slider that regularly hits 91, and isn't struggling with walks. You're probably going to be pretty interested in that pitcher. And that's true of Johan Oviedo, who had the 10 strikeouts in this most recent start, as you pointed out, had 18 swinging strikes in his previous start against the White Sox, which was 6 2/3 shutout innings. And I noticed he was missing a lot of bats even going back to spring training. That slider had gone up 3 miles per hour and still getting a ton of movement. And I'm pretty excited about Oviedo, as excited as you could be about a Pirates pitcher anyway.
All right. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Audacy app, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.